All right. Thank everybody for coming to the April Thomist Poets reading. And really excited to have Eric Sear here to read from his forthcoming debut collection. It Snows Here in June. And when's that coming out, Eric?
June 23rd.
Very appropriate.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to introduce the collection yourself, and then let's hear some of your stories.
Sounds great. I have a a proof copy here. I haven't gotten the officials yet. This one has like a white band at the top. That won't be there in the real one. But here's what the book looks like. It's called Here It Snows in June. All the stories were my thesis, that then got some additional work, and coming out from Wise Blood Books in June. Appropriate for the title, and then it's, I think, just a couple days after Father's Day, and a lot of the stories have to do with fatherhood in a degree, in different ways. Largely, I think I didn't plan it, but retrospectively, all of these stories I wrote when I was having young children. I probably started writing the first ones when my oldest was being born. He's 8, through the 5 total that I have now. And so it was on my mind a lot, of like what it looks like to be a bad father and things I wanted to avoid, and hopefully being a good father. So that the story I'm going to read doesn't really touch on that, but a lot of the stories do. And so that was part of the release date being close to Father's Day as well. I'm going to start with a very short story. That's the first one in the collection. And then I'll read one other one that's a little bit longer. So this one's called Ars Moriendi. That's what starts the book. Henry found the deer skull on a cool sunny morning in the woods behind their property. He was supposed to be working on his math, but his mom was helping the twins with reading and hadn't noticed him slip out the back door. He knew that if she checked in the den and didn't see him working, she would figure he was too tired and had gone back up to bed. He walked across the dormant grass and into the woods, pulling a red maple leaf apart vein by vein. The branches were all bare in the late fall, stretching out like thirsty roots toward the sky. He watched the water bubble over the stones of the creek and listened to its quiet rush. Sticks broke under his steps. Dead leaves shuffled and crunched. 100 yards from the house, a fit of coughing stopped his stomp through the crumpled leaves, bent him double with an ache in his ribs, and led his eyes to the skull on the ground before him. He reached down, lifted the skull, and wiped away the dirt. The buck must have died that spring when the antlers still held their velvet. The soft skin was rotted off now, but the burst blood vessels left a spider web of blue and purple stains. No rank scent of decay remained on the bones. When he held them close to his nose, he could smell the rich musk of the earth, but nothing putrid. The mice and porcupines had been at them. A concave hollow was chewed out of the left antler, a long, smooth depression that could hold a tablespoon of hot chocolate or the thick red cough syrup he took in the morning and at night before bed. He ran his fingers over the bumps at the base of each antler, not worn down, but sharp and hard. The deer had died when the horns were new, before it had time to rub them smooth. Henry had a little collection of things he had found in the woods that he kept in a shoebox under his bed. Pine cones, acorns, quartz, agate, part of a red squirrel tail, a cardinal feather, robin's egg, 2 minuscule bones from some kind of rodent, pressed leaves, 1 blue crayfish claw. Sometimes he let the twins look through the box and admire his treasures. But this skull would need a different place, somewhere safer, somewhere special. He carried the skull quietly into the house, past the little shrine with its votive candles and St. Jude and St. Peregrine. He heard his mom still teaching the twins as he stepped silently into his room. Remember, when the H follows the T, they make a new sound. In his bedroom, he ran his fingers over the purple stains, smooth like the crown of his head. He closed his eyes and inhaled the sweetness of death, placed his fingers into the 2 hollow sockets, and imagined those empty spaces refilled. That's Ars Moriendi. The other one I want to read is called Each the Size of a Child's Heart. And then we'll see what time feels like, if there's any excerpts or questions or whatever after this. But this one's a little bit longer, but hopefully not so long that it bores you to hear it. So Each the Size of a Child's Heart. You picked up your buddy Chris after work and have almost completed the 4.5-hour drive north to his grandpa's old cabin. The cabin's not in great shape, windows jammed, ceiling cracked, wood floor a map of scars, but it's clean enough and secluded, tucked deep in the woods. And it'll keep you dry, which is more than you can say about the old Eureka tent you would use if you went on your own. You've been making this fishing trip with Chris every summer since your freshman year of college. He lived down the hall in the same dorm, and the two of you hit it off right away. That was 16 years ago now, but you don't like to think about how long it's been. It makes you feel old, even though most of the time you still feel like you're just a kid, like you don't know what the hell you're doing, which you think is mostly true. You suspect that nobody knows what the hell they're doing. But you have a steady job as a caretaker at the zoo, and a kid who's doing all right, and people seem to think you are a capable, dependable guy. The world is wild and open up at the cabin. Overgrown fir trees, hundreds of years old, stand with their boughs stretched and sagging like crucified men. A stand of tall, straight pines, naked halfway up and coated in flaking red bark, towers above a forest floor covered with a silky coat of brown needles. Wolves track deer through the dirt paths in those woods. Owls screech past the windows at night. You've seen bear tracks torn into the mud, though you've never seen a bear up close. Chris talks to you about work and fishing rods and types of bait as you drive. You don't say much but listen and daydream until you reach the cabin. You pull up in your Jeep Durango after dark and carry your bags into the little building. The cabin looks like it could be the set of a slasher film. You make this same joke every year, but Chris still gives a laugh that is more for nostalgia and the history between you than at the joke itself, then gives his glib response. The hot chicks always die first in those movies, so I guess I'm safe. You laugh for the sake of camaraderie, but regret having revived the old banter because Chris's joke has the unpleasant effect of making you think about your wife, Jess. Things have not been going well with Jess for quite a few years now. When you married her, you knew the two of you were not perfect communicators, that she had goals that did not include you, that she had had bad relationships in the past, but things have gotten worse than you expected. She's all but neglected you and your son, whom she insisted you name Ethan Allen, even though you do not like the name. She treats Ethan as an accessory, poses him for pictures, uses him for likes and comments and praise, then leaves him alone with you. Because Jess is always busy, doing important things, making important connections, standing up for important causes. And you do not say anything about it, can't, because they are good causes. She is busy. On top of her work writing grants for nonprofits, she's organized a homeless encampment on the steps of City Hall to demand affordable housing. She leads bus groups to the state capitol to rally against racial injustice. You don't even know how many hours she spends each week at the Humane Society. So you feel that you can't complain. And you love her, you do, even though you have seen her change and pull away from you. You still love the smell of her skin and her soft, thick brown curls. You love the light in her eyes when she works herself into a passion, which makes it burn all the more that you are no longer able to ignite that fire, that you can only watch as that flame is fanned by other people, other causes. But she is your wife. You love her. You made a vow. For this trip, you had to ask your mother to watch Ethan because Jess is at the Capitol supporting an animal rights bill. You felt guilty asking your mom to help, even though she said she was happy to. She always says that, and you believe that she is. Still, you feel guilty because you know that she is passing judgment on your marriage and on your wife and on the way Jess should be the one watching Ethan this weekend. The one weekend each year you go anywhere on your own. And you feel even worse because you have bitterly passed the same judgment yourself. But you felt sick when Chris told his joke about the hot chick dying first in slasher films, not just because it's a bad joke and not just because it made you think of Jess, but because you have fantasized about Jess dying, choking, hemorrhaging, sliding off icy freeway through the guardrail, dying and freeing you to live life with Ethan without the guilt of explaining his absent mother. You love her, yes, but if she were gone, you do not want to fantasize about it. When the thoughts come up, as they often do, you try to dismiss them. You feel awful about them, wish you never did it, but still, you fantasize about Jess being dead and gone so that you could date again without any feelings of guilt, so you could have a second chance at marrying a woman who would wrap her arms around you at night, who would hold you tightly and let you cry into her shoulder, into her hair that would smell of lavender. Suddenly you realize that Chris has been talking about football while you have been feeling guilty about Jess. You catch part of what he says and make a vague comment that seems to convince him you've been listening. He resumes speaking while he hands you a beer and keeps talking until you both go to bed. Saturday morning, you go out early in Chris's aluminum boat to fish. The lake is calm and dark. Mist hangs over the surface in the cool air. You and Chris don't talk much, and you try to focus on the feel of the wet air against your face, the orange line of sunrise reflecting off the water, the hush of the trees on the shore. You drop your line in a shallow bay you know will be good for pike, and it isn't long before you feel a bite. The boat rocks with the strength of the fish's tug. You lean back and pull and try to keep your balance. Water slaps against the boat and sprays your arms as you rock back and forth. After a fight, you reel him in, up out of the water, and grab the line. He's big, 20 inches at least. You lift him up close to look him over. There's enough light that you can see into the pike's eye, and he seems to stare at you, to take you in with one long look. You reach to grab him by the gills, and he lets out a low guttural squeal, louder than any pike you've heard before. He snaps his mouth shut, and the line breaks, the hook still buried inside him, and he drops to the bottom of the boat. He flops and growls again, softer, until you pick him up and break his neck against the boat's cap rail. Damn, Chris says. That's a hell of a fish. You drop the pike into the cooler, wipe your forehead, and agree. A hell of a fish. The fishing is good the rest of the day, and you each catch your limit by early afternoon. Back at the cabin, you clean and scale the fish. You look into your pike's wide, glassy eye one more time, and even dead, it seems to see into you. Chris doesn't see you fling it away, uncut, into the woods. You finish preparing the rest of the fish. That evening, you pull out the 16-inch cast iron pan and cook fresh fillets over an open fire. You pick bones from your teeth as you eat. After supper, you sit with Chris by the fire, listening to it hiss and crack. Its orange light dances, casts flickering shadows against the trees. Glowing cinders pop and spit at your feet. One lands on Chris's pant leg and burns a hole there, and you laugh as he howls and hops up and down, brushing it off. He grabs 2 more beers and hands one to you, then stretches his arms and cracks his sternum in a way that you know means he has something to say and is thinking up the best way to say it. There's a woman in the small town a few miles down the road. You remember that he met her there during the fishing trip last year, and he tells you they have been talking to each other now and then ever since. He'd like to go see her if you don't mind. You think about Jess, and you do not want to be alone, but you say, of course not, you don't mind. And he asks again, are you sure? He doesn't want to ditch you. You don't mind? And you say, no, go have a good time. You'll stay behind and watch the fire. Chris smiles, winks, tells you you're a good guy. You do not think that is true, and you do not think Chris means anything by it, but you nod as he sets down his beer. You toss him the keys to the Jeep, and he climbs in. As you stare into the heart of the fire, you hear the engine rev up and are blinded by the sudden brightness of the headlights. Slowly, engine and headlights both fade as Chris rolls down the gravel road, and you watch a log burn through and collapse into the shimmering coals. Left alone in the immense seclusion of the woods, you realize how much life and noise surrounds you. An owl calls close overhead. You hear a loon song from farther off, followed a moment later by 3 or 4 others. Even the light breeze is enough to brush and scrape the tops of the birch and white pines together. The sky is clear, the stars as bright as you have ever seen them. You try to find Orion, to remember and place together the other constellations you learned when you were young. The glowing Milky Way is vast, more immense and unimaginable than you have ever realized. You feel with a strange urgency that it could swallow up everything. You, Jess, Ethan, everything you know, in an instant. A rustle in the woods pulls your attention down. Movement in the bushes where you threw the fish. Probably a raccoon, you think, coming to dig for scraps, maybe a skunk. As the sound gets closer, you see a shape taking form, and it's too large and too loud to be a raccoon. The broad black shadow heaves in the night. It seems to shudder as it approaches the cabin. Finally, you see its outline clearly in the darkness and realize it must be a bear. A black bear, you think, and though they are not aggressive, you do not want to meet one face to face. You rise and hurry into the cabin. Sliding the door closed behind you, you flip on the porch light and look out through the door's glass panel. The animal ambles into the clearing toward the fire pit. It reaches Chris's cooler, and you see that the creature is much larger than you realized at first. It is a brown bear, 8 feet tall. You watch wide-eyed as the bear reaches the cooler and bats it over. With a second swing, it breaks the lid off and rummages through the contents with its muzzle. There is no food inside, only ice and bottles of beer. The bear abandons the cooler and lumbers towards the house. It mounts the porch and heaves toward the door. Still watching through the glass, you find yourself staring straight into the bear's eyes. As you gaze frozen, the bear stops and stares back. The eyes are black, deep, alive, each the size of a child's heart. For a long moment, you stare into each other's eyes until you see yourself in those black depths, unaware of any time passing. Eventually, the bear breaks off staring and lifts one of its paws. The paw is, you estimate, twice the width of your face. Without a growl, without any sign of anger or malice or even hunger, it swats at the sliding door that stands between you. The glass cracks but does not break. You stand unflinching, watching as the bear lifts its paw to hit the glass again. The second hit breaks through and shattered glass sprays around you. The glass hitting the wood floor sounds like a sudden rainstorm before everything goes quiet. The bear shakes its head but makes no sound. Still frozen, you think about running. You know it will catch you. You think about fighting. You know it will kill you. You do not think about Chris being gone, or wish it would happen to Jess instead, or wonder what Ethan will do without you. Staring into the bear's eyes, you only see yourself dying. So you take a step forward. The bear stands on its hind legs, her hind legs, you see now. Stretched up to her full height, shaggy head nearly scraping the ceiling. You take another step toward her and stretch out your arms. Evenly, you walk into the warmth of the bear's chest, and she wraps her arms around you. You press your cheek against her body and cry silently into her thick, matted fur, which smells faintly of lavender. I don't know if anyone wants to ask any questions, or if you want me to read one more excerpt, or what do you think? I'm open to anything.
I would say read one more.
Okay. I'll read not a full story, but I'll read an excerpt from one that's called Fruit of Knowledge. So you could probably tell so far there's a lot of all the stories. Well, you can't tell about all the stories, but based on the two you've read, they're all set in Minnesota, some in kind of northern Minnesota setting where I live now, and some more rural southern Minnesota farmland where I grew up. These two are kind of more set in the Northwoods. And so the kind of the descriptions of kind of the Minnesota outdoors take up a fair amount of space within the stories, and it very much is intentionally kind of the location and evoking the feeling, both natural and human, of Minnesota was kind of a goal of the collection as a collection. So this next one is about another very Minnesota pastime, which I actually have never partaken in, which is going on the deer hunt. So this is called Fruit of Knowledge. Come on, Colby, 3:30, time to get up. Colby Rumpf grunted and rolled over on the thin cabin mattress. Colby, his dad hissed, gonna make us late for your first hunt. The boy's head jerked, suddenly alert. Time to go, I said. Colby sat up. A brass lamp glowed on the table next to him, and he squinted against the glare. A mounted deer head hung above him. The shadow cast by its rack sprawled across the wood-paneled wall and ceiling like long, twisted fingers. As Colby pulled on his blaze orange bibs and coat, jitters overtook his tiredness. He had waited for his first deer hunt for so long he'd almost thought it would never come. His dad filled a tall thermos with coffee and packed their lunch, tossing strips of jerky and energy bars into a plastic bag. He held out a headlamp toward Colby. Put this on. Throw this food in your bag. Colby, struggling to lace his boots, looked up. What? Put this lamp on. It's a hike out to the stand, and it's still dark out there. Colby glanced out the window. The light from the cabin glowed on the white ground. At the beginning of the week, the temperature had dropped below freezing, and a storm system from the Dakotas brought relentless snow. Colby had watched nervously as it piled up, but his dad told him the snow was a good thing. Easier to track a deer in the snow. Blood's easy to see on the white, and the tracks are so clear even an idiot could find them. Colby had nodded without speaking. Even the snow could prove him an idiot. After trying his boots and putting on the light, Colby grabbed his rifle and threw his small canvas pack on his back. Hurry up, Spud. Let's go. Uncle Dale and Uncle Dave are already out walking. No breakfast? Mom didn't make pancakes? Too early. We'll eat out there. They set out in silence. The snow-covered ground was jagged and hard in the cold morning. The icy snow would hold Colby on top of it for a few steps and break away under his foot the next, striking its frozen rim against his ankle. Colby shuffled his feet and tried to think light. He would not have described himself as round, but that was the adjective his classmates most often assigned him. He had argued at recess one day that technically it was impossible for a person to be completely round. Martin Dinkle countered with a sneer that he had seen it once, a totally round person, on a late-night TV show he watched when his parents thought he was in bed. One round ball, nose to chin, neck, boobs, stomach, just a bulge where her privates should be. Martin said she looked just like Colby. The boys all laughed, though Hannah Nielsen pushed back. Totally round? Like a ball. No way. Swear to God, you couldn't even see her arms, just fat little fingers wriggling at her sides like hot dogs. Several boys shook their heads in reverence. Susie Oberg crossed herself. Colby had tried to point out that even if that was true, which he doubted, it didn't describe him very well. But the bell rang and the others ran inside, leaving him huffing behind. Come on, Colby, his dad called. Keep up. Colby tried to hustle across the top of the snow. Still, he broke through the ice every few steps, stumbling behind. Though he grimaced each time the ice hit his shin, he refused to cry out. Grit and bear it, he thought. That's what his dad would say if he complained. Grit and bear it. Gotta stay close, Spud. Stay close, keep your head up, don't be an idiot. 3 rules. Chuck Ramsey's kid almost lost a nut his first year out. Head down, dragging behind, dicking around with his gun. You walk the wrong way out here, one of these neighbors might think you're a deer. Colby hustled closer and fell in line with his dad's tracks. After almost an hour of marching, his dad stopped. Colby was panting and sweating inside his blaze coat, and he took off his orange ski mask to wipe his face. This is it. This one's ours. Uncle Dale's a little farther up, his dad pointed, and Uncle Dave split off with Willie and Mark a while back. He paused and looked around, his lamp providing a beam of soft light in the darkness. They stood at the forested edge of a small clearing. A few broad maple trees, bare in the late fall, overshadowed stunted aspens and firs. Tangles of thick, ice-coated brush twisted like frozen waves around them. A network of rabbit tracks punctuated the snow, cut through by one hard-packed deer trail. Let's climb up. In the sand, Colby and his dad had barely enough space to sit on 2 stools with their bags on the floor and their rifles in hand. Colby could just make out the edge of the clearing through the stand's unframed window, but in the darkness he couldn't see how far it extended. He looked over at his dad. So, what do we do now? Come on, Spud, we've gone through this. What? How many times? Right. Colby balled his fists inside his gloves to keep his fingers warm. We wait. But I mean, what do we do while we wait? Sit still and watch for deer. And be quiet. Don't let them know we're here. Why couldn't I bring my phone? You got all of God's own creation right in front of you. You don't need a phone. Right. Colby shifted to his left and back to his right. With a sidelong glance at his dad, he stamped his feet lightly against the floorboards, testing how much feeling they still had. His dad's head snapped toward him with a hiss. Colby beat his fists together, trying not to make a sound. His dad cleared his throat and spit with a cloud of smoke out of the stand. The sky was clear and still bright with stars, and the moon cast faint shadows in the snow. It felt like the sun would never rise. Colby watched his dad, who was looking through the blind's window. The brim of his black cap blocked what little light made its way into the stand and cast a shadow over his eyes. Still, Colby could see the glint as those eyes darted around the woods. Colby glanced out the window, then turned back at his dad. We played dodgeball in gym yesterday, he started. I told you, quiet. I told you just now, not now. Colby's head dropped. He wasn't sure how much he should tell his dad about dodgeball anyway, what his reaction would be. Colby hadn't really gotten in trouble. He hadn't really done anything wrong. But the boys on the other team hadn't let up, ball after ball whipping his way. They laughed every time they hit him and laughed even harder every time he managed to dodge one. Hand me that thermos. Colby jumped at the sound of his father's voice. What? Quiet. The thermos. Pass me the coffee thermos. I don't have any thermos, Colby whispered. Of course you do. It's in your bag. Colby opened his bag and made a show of searching it. I don't have it. Didn't you pack it? I told you to pack it. His dad's voice rose as he continued. With the jerky. Oh, Colby's face began to burn. He could feel the heat spreading down his neck and back. You have the food, don't you? Colby knew he hadn't packed the food, but he checked his bag once more, hoping it had made its own way in. No. His dad dropped his head. Damn it, Colby. I told you to put it in your bag. I didn't hear you. What the hell is even in there if you don't have the food or coffee? Colby didn't answer. He had thought it strange that his dad told him to bring the empty bag, but decided it was best to just listen and do what he was told. Maybe they would use it to bring back part of the deer. Damn it, Colby. We can't be out here all day without any food. His dad shook his head. Damn it. After a silence, Colby said, "Do you want me to go back and get it? You wouldn't know where you're going, and it's too easy to get lost in these woods. Your mom would kill me." He sighed and stood up. Colby started to stand halfway up before his dad stopped him. "No, I'll be a hell of a lot faster on my own. You wait here." "Alone?" Colby gripped his rifle tighter. "Uncle Dale's a couple 100 yards that way. Uncle Dave's not far." Colby's face lit up for a moment. "Why don't we just get food from them? Why don't you just stop being a smartass?" His dad closed his eyes, inhaled through his nose, exhaled slowly. Colby stared at a swirl of dark grain in the plywood floor. "They only brought enough food for themselves, Spud. Not their job to take care of you." Colby looked up quickly. His face was red and wet. "I don't need any food. I'm not even hungry. Just stay." "Colby, I'm going. I need that coffee. And look at you. 15 minutes you'll be begging me for breakfast." Colby's dad swung a leg onto the ladder and started climbing down. "You stay out here, watch for deer, and don't do anything stupid." Colby opened his mouth to ask what would count as stupid, but decided that might be on the list. So he just mumbled, "All right. And for Christ's sake, stop crying. I'll be back." Colby nodded, still gripping his rifle. He stood to watch his dad climb down the ladder and stalk off through the snow. The sky glowed red behind him, and his black silhouette shook its head as it stamped. Colby wiped his face, coughed, and spit through the window. I'll stop there. Thank you.